When you have a rainbow at the start of your pilgrimage, you know it's going to be a good pilgrimage. We got to Subiaco. We got there a little bit late, but the monks saw us on the camera. They came. They opened up the sacred cave where St. Benedict came and prayed, and where Subiaco, then the monastery was built. So they literally cut out into the cave, and then they added the church facade to kind of the front. They've painted all throughout, telling the stories of the saints. We were blessed. Not only did the priest come back, the guardian, but the abbot came, and so they also blessed and opened up the shop for us so they could bless our Benedictine medals and everything to that nature. So truly a beautiful place and inspiration. The paintings on the wall, they said this was the church for the poor, because the poor could come who didn't own their own Bibles, who couldn't read, and they could tell the stories of the life of Christ. They could tell the stories of the life of St. Benedict so that they could draw closer to him. This next image is one of my favorite. It's the story of St. Scholastica and Benedict, their final encounter. He needed to get back to the monastery. She said, "Won't you stay and pray with me?" And the rainstorm came. He had to spend the night. We were blessed with staying at Subiaco. I would highly recommend it. We were still on Texas time, so I woke up early and I was able to pray the Liturgy of the Hours, which, is attributed to the Benedictine monastic movement, as well as I was able to read about the miracles of St. Benedict to better know him, which helped me the next day when we went to Monte Cassino, where St. Benedict and St. Scholastica's bodies are located. Now, Monte Cassino has been destroyed from various wars, but their tombs have not been messed up. And so throughout you saw the various stories of St. Benedict's life or St. Scholastica's life, mainly St. Benedict's in this location. And this underneath was the more primitive area where his tomb originally was before the more ornate church on top. So really quite a blessing. From there we drove to the east coast of Bari in Italy, where we went to St. Nicholas's Cathedral there. We were blessed. It was a Friday of Lent, so the cathedral was still open. So this is where his body is located. It had been kidnapped from Myra. Because we were there on a Friday, they were doing Stations of the Cross, and then they finished with a blessing of a thorn of the cross. So what a gift for that. The next day we headed out to St. Michael's Cave. And so this is where St. Michael originally appeared to a shepherd. Then it came to the Archbishop saying, "I want to have this built." This is the only chapel not consecrated by human hands, because it was consecrated by St. Michael himself. From there we went to San Giovanni Rotunda, where that image there was the children and Jessica outside of the Church of the Suffering of the Poor that Padre Pio started. So I think they really did a great job here at Padre Pio's place. He's an incorruptible. What they did is they took the convent and they sectioned it off to include his rooms and some of the stuff in the church that you would want to go to be able to connect with Padre Pio. And right next door, they built a large church as well to accommodate the many, many pilgrims. This is where he received the stigmata, this location up here. Obviously, Padre Pio in his lifetime, they most likely had a pretty good inclination he was going to be a saint. So a lot of his stuff has been kept and preserved, and I really think they did a first-class job of showing this. The last time I was here was about 12, 13 years ago, and I was here. It just happened on his feast day, which was like Padre Pio Fest. So it was totally different coming at a time when we didn't have all these other pilgrims and it could just really be us. There was probably a couple bus loads, but that was nothing compared to when I was there for Padre Pio Fest. From there, we went to Lanciano. We were able to spend time before the Blessed Sacrament and Exposition, and then we were able to celebrate Mass where Jesus Christ's body and blood was transformed in the 700s. The next day, we headed up to Loreto. Inside this basilica, the house, the walls of the site of the Annunciation from Nazareth had been transported and moved here. You couldn't take photos inside. From there, we headed on up to the northeast part to Venice, in case you can't tell by the water we're seeing here. We went to St. Mark's Basilica. It was definitely heavily touristed, so that always makes me kind of sad when the churches, I want people to come and visit them, but whenever they just become a tourist attraction, that makes me sad. We were able to join in for Liturgy of the Hours there, and then a gondola ride. The next morning we started off early with a 6:20 a.m. Mass at St. Anthony of Padua. And so we were able to join Mass. This was a vibrant spiritual community. They had 45 friars still located at this location. This church was built on the site of where St. Anthony it was his favorite church and where he wanted to be buried, and so his body and tomb were there. We're already showing images of St. Dominic in Bologna. This here is where he is buried, and so right now we're seeing his skull as well as his body there in Bologna, as well as St. Dominic. This is not him. Those are other saints associated with the Dominican order, so this is kind of their mother house, and so throughout their church you have all these reliquaries with all these various Dominican saints in Bologna there. From Bologna, we continued on with the Dominican saints, and we went to Siena to encounter St. Catherine of Siena. She is known as incorruptible. Her head is in Siena. That's not her head. You'll see it here coming up. I had to take a photo from far away. But right here is where her head's, in that area above the altar. This was the original church there in Siena that she would have gone to, and there's Helene up there praying where St. Catherine could have prayed. We also went to her home in Siena. So her head's in Siena, her body's in Rome. So this home area that used to be their family's home has been turned into a church in Siena as well, and just depicting various scenes from St. Catherine's life, helping us to draw closer to God through that encounter with the saint. From there, we got into Assisi and we went to the Ponticello. I don't say that correct, but this is the church where the Franciscan community spent a lot of their time. We spent the night at a Franciscan convent. Assisi is just a delightful town. We then headed to the place where St. Francis stripped of his clothing, as well as where Carlo Acuta's body is located. His heart will be in another church in Assisi. He wasn't from Assisi, but the reason Carlo is here now is because he loved Assisi so much. This is where he wanted to go. This is St. Clare's. This is the actual church that Francis was praying before. It came from San Damiano, but this is the crucifix he was praying before that has been moved here for preservation. Down here, we're going to go to the tomb of St. Clare inside of here. We also have the chapel of her sister, St. Agnes, as well. That's within here. These are showing some of the various scenes. I love this painting. It was really quite lovely. We also have relics of St. Clare as well as St. Francis located here in St. Clare's Basilica here in Assisi. So showing many of the various relics attached with these two saints, what they wore, how they lived their life. So it was quite lovely. From there, we headed up to the church where his family was their home. It's known as the New Church. This is also where they locked their son away, not wanting him to go into this type of life. So many parents even today struggle with their children entering religious life. And so it's really this ability for us to say, God has entrusted me with these children. Now I open it up and I give it totally to him. Whatever it is that he wants, that's what I want my child to do, because that's how they will have the most joy in their life. This is San Ruffiano, the cathedral there. This is where Carlo's heart's going to be located, as well as the baptismal font that would have been in Assisi. There's Carlo's heart. And so we see this imagery here of Francis and Dominic. And then this is the baptismal font that would have been in use in the time of Francis and Clare. And you see the original old church there, the Cathedral Ruffiano. From there, we went on to St. Francis's Basilica Cathedral there, painted throughout, really quite magnificent. So many things to draw you in, so many lessons about the various Franciscan saints. This right there is the tomb of St. Francis, the story, and then he's buried around 4 of his companions, with his 5th companion being buried upstairs. So these are his companions. So St. Francis, at the time of his life, people, they wanted the saint because that would be great for a town to have the saint's body. So they had brought his body back when he died. They rushed him in, they buried him. They didn't let people know. It was only more in the more modern time where saint relics don't get stolen that they were able to show this. Then we went out to San Damiano. This was where the very first church where Francis began to help to rebuild. This is also where then the Poor Clare community started. This is the room that St. Clare died in. That's a spot that St. Clare died in, where those people are praying right there. This was her chapel right next to where they stayed. This was the courtyard where the invaders had came in and she brought the monstrance out. This was their refectory, the dining hall. Those flowers represent where St. Clare's seat would have been. We went into Rome, and our first morning we started off at St. Paul outside the walls. Quite a magnificent church. This was one of the doors of mercy for the Jubilee Year of Hope. We were able to receive confession here. Everybody absolutely loved our confessor. Some of the kids even said it was their best confession ever. This is his burial spot, as well as the chains that St. Paul had. We then went to the Colosseum and the Forums, where this is a place of torture for the Christian martyrs in the early church. We then went to St. John Lateran, the second of our papal basilicas we went to. They have a fantastic reliquary that you can go in and see various things, and they have a book that tells you all these things. So I didn't include all the photos of everything that I'm showing you, but the reliquary was really quite fantastic. And then, of course, we have Peter and Paul's heads above the high altar there. Their relics are in there. Right across the street, and part of the St. John Lateran complex is the Holy Stairs, the stairs that St. Helen brought from Rome. This now is the Church of Jerusalem. This is the sign of the wood of the cross of Christ. These are some of the original relics from the crucifixion of Christ: the nail, the thorn, the larger section of wood, the sign for the true wood of the cross. Really amazing. Many people never go to the Church of Jerusalem. Highly, highly recommend it. This is now the Basilica of St. Clement. He's buried underneath here. They have great excavations as well that you can go underneath as St. Clement's excavation. Our third papal basilica is St. Mary's Major. Down here you're going to see, and we're going to be zooming in on it, this is part of the wood from the manger of Christ. We were blessed to celebrate Mass here on the Feast of St. Joseph. We had like 20 priests, 2 cardinals, 2 bishops from other rites. It was really wonderful at St. Mary's Major. The next day we started out at the Vatican Gardens. So we had a special tour for the Vatican Gardens and the 16th Chapel. That let us kind of get this behind the scenes access. So really a wonderful opportunity to walk around the garden. So my favorite part about the gardens was seeing the monastery where St. Benedict right here spent the remaining years of his life. I'm sorry, I said St. Benedict, Pope Benedict. He is my favorite pope in my lifetime. And then we went through part of the Vatican Museum to get to the 16th Chapel. You can't take videos or photos inside the 16th Chapel, so there's no photos, but it was an absolutely amazing experience. My recommendation is when you get into the 16th Chapel, get to the wall that has a bench and you're able to sit down and just pray. And there I just prayed for all the future cardinals that would come in that space for the election of our future popes, just praying for our church. Inside St. Peter's Basilica, we just showed the tomb of St. Peter and the tomb of St. Benedict. This is Castle San Angelo. And then from there we went to the Society of Jesus Church, this Church of St. Ignatius. So this is kind of showing this Church of St. Ignatius is just absolutely elaborate and gorgeous. And then you go to the Church of Gesù, which is actually the foundation of St. Ignatius, his home in Rome. And we were able to go inside to where his room was. They had this death mask showing what his face would have actually looked like. That's actually his actual physical height. You see Charles there next to him. So seeing his room, his chapel, some of his personal possessions and belongings. This was a real neat part of the trip. You know, so often people think of St. Ignatius with the imaginative exercises. They think of him as a Spaniard, but the reality is, because of what he wanted the Jesuits to do, the establishment was there in Rome. So this is part of that church there, the Church of Gesù, the Church of Jesus. We came back to the Vatican to have 6 p.m. Mass that evening. So we celebrated Mass. The church was pretty dang empty compared to earlier. We were able to do the Holy Doors as they were closing the Holy Doors that evening. Pray before some of the tombs, including John Paul II, who's upstairs. And then you can really see a fairly empty church at this point as they're closing the doors. We then came outside with a couple hundred pilgrims to pray for Pope Francis's health since he had been hospitalized, and that's why we didn't have a papal audience. That's our Italy pilgrimage.